was going to unveil my speech. It's about 40 pages, but I don't have a speech today. I am here to say how much we care about our chamber and our small businesses in our region. I'm Ruth Swain, the director of the Small Business Development Center at Rogue Community College. We couldn't be here without the support of Rogue Community College, our city of Grants Pass. We do receive chamber funding. We're a nonprofit and we depend on those monies in order to provide free, no-cost, confidential advising. We do more than help startups and write business plans. We help people at any stage of their business. Even if you're a raging successful business, you can come to us and there'll be a confidential meeting where you can just bounce ideas off of our advisors. And some of them here today, Karen Ramarino is one of our broadly experienced advisors. She's an expert in human resources and teaches business owners and small businesses how to manage people and how to stay out of jail. I'm sorry, that was flippant. Maybe I should have written a speech. And Christy Kiltz is also here today. She represents us at the Greeters. She's one of all you chipper people who at 6 a.m. want to get together and be a little rowdy. And Christy also teaches our marketing classes. If you want a presence on the web, Christy's your person. I also want to say how much we love and care about our chamber and the leadership of our chamber. And we're thrilled to serve on the Business Retention and Expansion Committee. I see many of our partners here this morning, and I want to thank you all for what you're doing to move our economy forward by supporting our foundational base, which is small business. And it doesn't matter how small or how big, it's driving our economy. And not right now is a very challenging time. So thank you, and we appreciate being this morning's sponsor.
Thank you, Ruth. And so as many of you know, the Chamber's mission is to support and promote local commerce through communication, advocacy, and partnerships. And like Ruth said, our foundation is the fabric of businesses in our community. We're always a business first mentality, but it's not just, Terry sitting in my office figuring out what needs to be done. We employ only 3.5 FTE, and through that, the networking, the advocacy, the community development, the events, our foundation is that economic development happens through community development. And that's way more work than the 3.5 of us can do, and especially given the fact that my staff does way more than I do. So if I could take just a moment to first recognize my staff, Christy Swafford in the back with events and programming. Makes me look good. She does all the work I take credit for. And then we've got Colt Foster joining us today. Membership and Business Development was our interim, and accounting. And then we still have to have people back at the office, so we have Wendy and Shirley back at the office. So even with that incredible team, it still takes more. We are blessed to have volunteerism through our local businesses, whether that's boards, committees, showing up to events and participating. So I won't put them all on the spot, but for people that are members of our Business Retention and Expansion Committee, if you can just raise your hand, thank you, because these folks here help execute what comes to fruition today. And again, this isn't me sitting in my office hoping I understand the pulse of businesses and what needs to go on. We truly are a reflection of our local businesses, and the opportunity to get out and do these in-person surveys is a huge lift. So beyond just that committee, there are others in this room that got out and did those personal one-on-one interviews. I've heard back from them. It's incredibly gratifying to get to sit down with those businesses and learn how their world works. But truly, the data is what speaks for itself. So thank you to those who got out and did all those surveys. Finally, I want to thank the City of Grants Pass and Josephine County for also stepping up to support this work as sponsors. This work is used through economic development agencies. I know the city, our friends over here at So Ready, the county. I mean, this data is incredible. And so a final thank you then is to the businesses that participated. I mean, it is your voice that is the reason that I stand here today. We hope that we do you proud. And this work through the BR&E survey we do every 3 years will guide my focus and direction over the years to come. So the businesses that participated are the true superheroes here today. But only a close second to close first to Mr. Chuck Rund. For those of you that are on the BR&E committee, I mean, every time we get to go back over his resume, and he's so very humble, I've done this a couple times, and it never ceases to impress me. But Chuck was the president of the Charleston Research Company. That's a public policy and opinion research firm that designs and develops strategies for clients in business, politics, and the law. The company conducted extensive national public opinion research for over 250 corporations, including 24 listed on the top 100 of the Fortune 500. Recognized as an expert in the research and analysis of specialized issues affecting the political community, Mr. Rund has been a key player for 4 presidential campaigns, 12 gubernatorial campaigns, 17 Senate races, campaigns for 48 elected congresspeople, and many, many state and local initiative campaigns. Mr. Rund has been an election night analyst for CBS News for 32 years and remains abreast of national and statewide trends. In recent years, Mr. Rund has also served on the boards including All Care Health, the Grants Pass Family YMCA, and the Grants Pass and Josephine County Chamber of Commerce, along with representation in Rotary Club of Grants Pass and volunteerism in numerous community activities. It is not only an honor to have him help calculate this data, but to be able to call him a friend and a mentor as I step into this role. Chuck, thank you, and I'm going to let you take it from here.
Well, first of all, thank you, Terry, and it's really a pleasure to be with you this morning. The first thing I would like to do is just to say I'm a member of the BR&E committee, so I'm speaking on their behalf. So a lot of people put their effort and thought into this. I was one of them who was part of that group, and I get to talk to you about it. So I'm not in charge of it, is what I'm trying to say. But it's interesting. Data, no one's ever really in charge of the data. I think the data speaks for itself, and when you take data and you begin to look at it, it begins to guide us in terms of saying, how do we want to look at the world, and how do we want to understand where we fit within that context. I would also like to introduce Sarah Long. She is on the phone listening in to us. Sarah has done all the data analysis, pulled the charts together. The charts, you see her logo is at the bottom, Long Research, representing that, and she will be available for any technical questions we have or give us some conversation to us as we go further. And with that, let me just go ahead and jump into the data, talk a little bit about it. I mean, if you haven't caught the news this morning, actually the news has something to do today with the data that we're talking about. So if you've missed that, it's coming up. How's that? So with that, let's... So the methodology for this research, there were a total of 77 interviews conducted by all of the business community with other businesses in the area. The sampling was a sampling designed by the chamber itself, who went and selected businesses in the area. We went out and sampled those with business people doing the interviewing in pairs, and they were all trained by RCC, as you've just heard how that played out. It was a very effective way. We followed a model that was developed in the 1990s at the University of Minnesota, which has a video platform from which you can look at a training model and mode, and we all went through that same set of training, worked on that, and so that the data you're seeing is a data that's been generated by the community, by the business community, about the business community. So the first thing to keep in mind is I'll shift back and forth between different audiences. I'll try to keep that always in your impression, but the data you're going to be looking at is the data of Josephine County and Grants Pass businesses. It's their point of view, their perspective on what is going on with these issues. And so I just want to thank, along with Terry, all of you who participated in that process in doing the interviewing and contacting your fellow businesses and business members in the community, and as well. You did a great job, and the data so says so. Today's presentation is going to be cut into two pieces. The first is going to be a national overview, Josephine County and Grants Pass, kind of top concerns, what's going on there. Oh, by the way, there's a sheet on your tables if you want to kind of look at those, or you can look at the charts up here, and so on and so forth. Some consumer sentiment, jobs, inflation, tariffs, AI, what's going on, and we'll chat about that. The second piece of the presentation will be the actual BR&E data, and that's going to be about, essentially business operating status, revenue increases, labor shortages, what's going on, employee recruitment, city and county attitudes of businesses towards city and county, and to get a sense of how they're looking at what the community is and what the community means to them. And I think you'll find some of that. We are going to show approximately 26 or 27 data charts. That's less than the 77 available for you. So if you get really excited and want all of it, forget it. I'm not going to do all. But, there's plenty more behind this. And so there's more to read in, and I'm sure you'll enjoy that as those unfold. But let's just begin. So in taking a look at what are the top concerns, this is a question we asked. It's about question number 13 or 14 in the survey. What are the top 3 concerns you have looking forward? 4 major items came up on that. And the first was decreasing consumer confidence in spending, global or U.S. recession, availability of qualified workers, and inflation. And I think one of the things you can see on these 4 is that 3 of the 4 are national issues. So here we are in Josephine County, kind of out on the West Coast. I mean, nobody calls us on the phone, right, from New York or Washington and says, "Hi, how are you doing today?" Have you ever noticed we don't get a good weather report, on the national news? Have you ever noticed that? I'm just kidding. I'm just being, a local guy. But I mean, the interesting part. I mean, forget it. I'm not going to go there. But the interesting thing about all that is that these issues are dominating the mind of businesses when we did these surveys in the fall and the winter of 2025. And so what's going on is that we're part of the national scene. And so I'm going to spend just a little bit of time on that national scene view. Those other issues, if you can't read them, it was intended that way, by the way, from the chart. I want to just mention some of them, however, though, so you know what it is. Financial impact of operations, obviously that's something we can look at and deal with. That's what businesses are thinking about. Tax and trade issues, impact supplies and disruptions, wildfires. Pretty interesting issue. Sometimes that goes with safety as well. Lack of information on decision-making, lower productivity, employee stress, these kinds of things. They were all part of that whole set of things. But because these big national issues came up, we decided to go ahead and try to talk a little bit about what's going on nationally. So one of the places to take a look at is the Michigan Index of Consumer Sentiment. This is a monthly survey that's done by Michigan. It's been done for the last, I think, 60, 75 years. It's basically what kind of confidence does the consumer have in what's going on. Well, the idea that people aren't spending money and they're thinking about not buying and not engaging in the marketplace, part of that is because they really don't know where the country's going. There's an unease about what our economy is nationally, what that's going, and you can see the sentiment down here on the far right-hand side is the lowest it's been in forever, okay, for a very long period of time. And so what's going on here is basically the sentiment for the country as a whole is just got people not opening their purse, not opening their billfold, not going out and buying, and being somewhat circumspect about where the economy in general is going. That confusion causes businesses a great deal of angst, and we are no different than any other business anywhere else in America. Blue-collar employment, by the way, is down. The blue-collar manufacturing jobs, by the way, are this yellow bars. You can follow that. This is over the last couple of years, and you can see it's still underwater in terms of growth structure. So one of the things is the blue-collar community is also not being employed fully for sure, and there's growth is needed in those areas. So some things to kind of think about. The next is consumption trends. This is kind of a little bit of a complicated chart, but it's kind of interesting. But of the top 10% of U.S. earners, which is this group up here, they actually account for half of all consumer spending. So if you're in a market that doesn't have the top 10% of earners in your market, and you're wondering why, the business is decreasing in sales or there's less going on, then one of the reasons for that is simply from a national perspective, of who puts the money in the marketplace to begin with. And particularly in times when there's a shortage or nervousness about the economy in general, these kinds of issues about market consumption trends really come into play and really make a difference. Economic opportunities. Let's see. Where do we go? Oh, there we go. Economic opportunities. Oh, I'm sorry, higher inflation burden. The other issue that's going on is inflation still is in play in the marketplace. We think maybe it was getting better. It has gotten better. It's decreased in general overall since Trump has been president in this last period of time. But that whole rise that took place during the Biden administration is still there, and it's kind of flattened out. It's not really moving much. People basically are saying, prices are still high. It's still expensive to go to the store. And certain kinds of commodities really have made a big difference on that. And so that whole inflation burden is with us as well. Economic opportunities, that is, do you think that the economic opportunities have been increasing, decreasing, or staying the same? Well, they've been increasing for people that have money, according to a CBS poll, at 62%. 53% of the people who are in the middle class say they're decreasing. And so what we've got is we've got a cultural divide based on money. If you've got money, you're spending it. And you found out that 50% of the goods are bought by 10% of the people. And so you can see the math. It doesn't get very hard to all of a sudden realize one or two customers who decide not to purchase creates havoc on small markets. We're in one of those small markets, one of those ways to look at it. Things are staying the same at about a third of the population out there, but basically there's a great deal of upheaval, a great deal of concern. These economic opportunity issues are really there. And also tariffs. This is, of course, where the news was this morning. This is a chart on the left-hand side that kind of takes a look at what the tariff trends were and how they shifted beginning in January and February of 2025. There weren't really tariffs before that period of time, and now there are. And so the reason why that V is in those data charts right in here is because simply tariffs are moving up. Now, the news this morning, I'm sure all of you have heard, is that the Supreme Court has denied almost all of the tariffs that President Trump authorized. And so they're not legal. Oh, good. What's the next move? This is going to be interesting. One thing it doesn't do is it doesn't make the angst about where the economy is better. It doesn't say, oh, boy, that's great. We can go back to being what? It's been a year since we've been there. Where are we now? You can see what's happening. The data on the right says a poll. This came from the New York Times and a Siena poll that just came out in January, actually, at the end of January, and found 54% of the voters opposed Mr. Trump's tariffs. 51% said the president's policies had made life less affordable for themselves. And so the public is in here weighing in, and they didn't like them Well, now they're not supposed to be there in the first place. We're going to have to, deal with that as a national public policy issue. How do we go about doing that? How does the economy work in that process? Interesting. One of the things about a market economy, though, is it's resilient. There's a great deal of change that can take place, but it's resilient slowly. Money issues travel slowly through people's perception of what they mean. If you want to have sharp issues, look at safety or something like foreign policy. A foreign policy issue will spike the issues within 24 hours. Economic issues lay flat, and it takes a year to see turnaround occur in people's attitudes about what's going on in the economy and where things are. I thought I would just add a chart or two here on, I kind of like this from The Economist. It's a call illustration, just looking to the future because, you've now seen what the past was. So where are we going to go on the national economy? Well, one thing to say is, this was about tariffs. You can see in the U.S. economy, you can see these little bags on the sides holding up the great weight that America is kind of carrying. I thought that was a cute way of kind of describing, what was going on. But there's actual real data to say what's going on in the economy to make this work. And it's in part tariffs, but it's another thing called the AI. So next year, we're expecting to spend $700 billion. And here are the they call them the Magnificent Seven, if you've all not heard that term or used them. But it's the 7 big high-tech teams that are putting all the money into AI. And they're now starting to write story after story after story in comparing whether AI is similar to the dot-com bust that took place in 2001, 2002, or is it something new and different, and how does that affect the economy? But let's not go there. But it's interesting. I'm spending a little bit more time on this because it's really going to be critical as we think this thing through about where our businesses go and what we're all about. And lastly, let me end with this on this national look. This is Gallup data, and this is run over the last 20 years, but they've run this particular part of the poll for a very long time. What are your positive and negative images of business? The bottom line on that, as you can see, is this is big business. And the top line, just above 90%, favorability and likability and positive, is small businesses. So the business community is perceived by 9 out of 10 Americans as highly, highly positive. So it's one of the things we have going for us is we're full of small businesses. So every time you see someone on the street, it's somebody you like. I'm kidding. I mean, but you got to have a little humor here. Pollster humor is terrible, by the way. So just so you know, we laugh at the strangest things. It's right. So, but anyway, but the point is, this community that's talking to you is basically one of the best liked communities that exist in America. The only competition they get is from nurses. Okay, down a little bit further, doctors, and down below that, ministers. Okay, so well, I'm just trying to give a little bit of a graded table about how Gallup's data works. But anyway, that's kind of what's going on. And with that, let me jump in to the structure of what's going on with the BR&E in 2025. The first set of data we took a look at were basically products and services or sales that have taken place over the last 3 surveys that we've been conducting. The question we asked is, looking at the past year and the current year and the future, has your products and services increased, decreased, or stayed the same over that period of time? As you take a look at this top set of data in 2025, 60% of the people say things were going to increase in 2025 over this next year. As they looked at their current year, they had increased and had jumped up to 52%, as you can see here in that. And then in the previous year, you can see in the past year, they were down at 48%. So what you're getting is you're getting a general increase in sales, general increase in productivity and services, and some excitement in the data. When you compare these data, however, to the other years, 23, we've jumped 20 points almost in terms of services going up since the survey was last conducted in 22, 23, and it's way up from where it was, at 81% in 2017. Ooh. So what's happened is that we're coming back from the recession, but not completely. We're not all the way back. The last time around, it was that same 75 in 2017. It was very high. People thought things were going to go up in the current year. It was 17%, and it had popped up into the 40s. Now we're clear up into 60s. So what's happened is we're slowly, incrementally, over a 3-year period of time, it's a slow slog back, and we're nowhere near where we were in 2017 for current year, for next year, and for the previous year, well into the 80s. We're still 20 points down. This market's not recovered. The business people we talk to, they've looked at their books. This came right out of their financials from where their business is today and what's going on. That was the answer to this question. And the financials told the surveyors, in fact, we're still 20 points down from where we were, 8 years ago. And we've not recovered from the pandemic. Although we're getting better, it's a slow pull through society as these issues play. Looking at that again in another way, from sales production levels, where the question was overall, in your industry, would you say that sales and production levels today are increasing, unchanging, or decreasing? As you can see, 43% say increasing in the current business survey, 22% were unchanged, 28% saying decreasing, so a fairly high number on that decreasing side. Look at the data from the other years that we've taken a look at this. In 14, it was 78%. In 17, it was 78%. In 23, it was 23%. So we're still 20 points down in terms of people's perception of what their industry is doing. I'm a little concerned about that in the sense that it seems that you would think the business special interest industries would be supporting the businesses who belong to that industry, in an effective way to be able to have them solve some of the business problems they're facing in the greater marketplace. Not seemingly working well. It seems that there's a slide there where that whole business industry base is not really assisting the individual businesses in a way that we would expect that to occur. I don't know if that's a long-term way to think about that trend. It's a short term. What it simply says from a business perspective, however, is that there's not a lot of help available in the broader market that's giving advancement to the growth in sales and the growth in terms of the businesses around. Industries have always been the special interest that help drive competition for each business. I'm a little nervous about that data and where that data point fits. It may be that they're not the ones helping out. Maybe the businesses got concerned to get help from the government, which they got a great deal, by the way, and most businesses did, over the pandemic period of time. Maybe it's shifting in that way, but something we should take a look at, be cautious of, and as we go through on our business strategies through the chamber for this next period of time, to think in those terms a little bit, to say, what does this really mean, and where does it fit? There's a lot of, maybe it's just the whole general attitude that I just finished talking about, all of those consumer sentiments and employment and all that. Maybe it's just that stuff. But primarily it says, where are the lifelines that are being thrown out to business? Clearly, even the industry internally is not being assistive in making that as effective as possible. Innovations. We asked a great question on innovations. Over the same 3-year period, has your business organization made any of the following changes, or do you expect to implement them in the following areas of innovation? Number one, expansion in the use of technology. Number one, people are doing a great deal of that. A lot's happened there. Number two, added product lines, adopted efficient technologies, entered new markets, these kinds of things. And as these kind of drive on down, you get all the way down to the bottom here, where it's advancement due to foreign competition is not a whole lot of an issue that we're dealing with locally. Adjustments due to new and anticipated tariffs that's there, but no one's had felt it at this point in time. So, but as you can see, these big issues up here around technology, adding product lines. In other words, businesses are working to make the adjustments they can make internally to their business in the market they're looking at, but they're not looking too far beyond that on that innovation side. But innovation is playing a great role. But there's one interesting little caveat to that data, and that was we actually asked people what percentage of your sales are internet-based. And 14% said 51 to 100%. And then the next number is 9% said 26 to 50%. So if one of the indicators about how technology is engaging our marketplace, and only 24% of the people of the businesses in our marketplace are using the internet as a sales-based function, I don't know, did we miss the train? Did the internet train go through town and we decided not to take a ride? Are all the businesses not engaged in this and it doesn't make any difference? In other words, they're not going to make any money there, so they're not going to get employed here? I mean, so what's going on? I mean, please in your mind, be creative here and add a few ideas. This is something that Terry and the BR&E team will look at and try to find out, and so already in others in the area, like what's going to drive people to come to our areas, to work with us and be part of our community in terms of bringing business in. How are we going to expand that? What does technology fit to that? Is it just that we don't like technology? I don't know. I mean, you can get a lot of answers here, and we need to take a look at them. But clearly, what's going on is something to really consider what this means and what this means for business and where we all fit into the marketplace. But I found that to be an interesting subtitle to everyone's working on technology issues, but no sales. Okay. So I don't know. I don't know if that means you got a good homepage or not. We'll have to kind of figure that out. We didn't go deep, as you can see, on that particular issue. But clearly, these data, are pretty. In fact, 42% just said none. Zero. We have nothing to do with that. And that's understandable. A lot of businesses don't do that. So we can understand that in part it's true there. Okay, this is also another interesting thing, market geography. Where is your market? In other words, where does this is in mean data, and if you want, we can get Sarah online here to go through means and averages and those kinds of statistical analysis. But one of the things here is most people are basically talking about their market as local. It's in the Grants Pass, Josephine County area. The second mention is regional. It's Medford, Southern Oregon, that kind of a thing. But here's the interesting part of this chart is that the next comment is it's national, equal to what regional is. Okay. Half of what the local Josephine County and Grants Pass are, which is kind of an interesting set of data when you kind of take a look at that. But one thing it's not is that it's not statewide. We don't look to Northern Oregon or Middle Oregon for anything that we're doing in business in Grants Pass and Josephine County. It's half of the national. By the way, I went back and checked this from the 2022 data, and the numbers are identical within a couple of percentage points of what these numbers are. So we have a Grants Pass, Josephine County, Southern Oregon view of where our market is, and then we have a national view. We do not have an Oregon view. Now, I don't know if that means that Oregon never helps us do business. I don't know. These are questions that a researcher asks. Why is that taking place? Are we not getting any help there? Are we not making any money there when we do something statewide? Do we have no one suggesting that statewide is the way we want to go look? But if we're looking for, I tend to find that businesses follow the trail where money is. So if you're doing something and they're not paying you, it's really hard to say you had a good year. I don't know if you've had that experience in life, but it's, so the point is, if we're following the money, it must be in Northern California. Maybe it's the state of Jefferson. Anyway, take your own theory about this, put it in some perspective. But clearly, if we're following the money's not being followed locally or statewide in Oregon from our perspective. It's really being followed locally, and then we have a very, very strong national perspective. I think maybe what we need to do is heighten that national perspective, take a deeper dive, look at where we're going, and see kind of what's going on. Anyway, that'd be fun to take a look at that and see how that plays out. Workforce issues. 4 major workforce issues came up from businesses in the survey. Problems recruiting employees at 56%, availability of childcare, adjustable availability of workforce housing, and problems resisting retaining employees. So 2 of those 4 are employee-based and employee-related. The Chamber has been doing a great deal of work on all of those. The two middle ones are very interesting in terms of the of childcare and housing, two major issues that really have a great deal to do, and the community and the county and the city and the county have worked strongly on over the last couple of years. There's a couple of additional charts that talk about in terms of availability of childcare. Actually, that's improved by 10 percentage points from the 2022 data set. So we're getting better there. We're actually doing a better job. I think you may have noticed that a lot of effort's gone into childcare by businesses, by nonprofits, by people engaging in that. That's true today. Is still true, and it's getting better, but it's still a major issue and one that's important. And also the same with housing. That issue has gotten better too. It's decreased a bit. People have seen some movement forward in the housing. It's occurring there. Particularly the big nonprofits have jumped in, and they're supplying housing for people to have. The homeless is there. It's still a major issue. And these are critical things that are taking place. However, they're not solving all of those issues in a complete way. One of the questions we asked later in the survey is, what are some of the main disadvantages of being located in this community? Number one, social issues. Number one of the social issues almost totally is homelessness. Massive issue, big problem. It's still there, it's still real. People told stories like, yeah, I go to work, I found someone sleeping in my doorway. I didn't know, should I wake them up? You know, were they armed? Were they not? What do I do? How do I get in? You know, I'm 23, I'm just supposed to open up. What's my job? I just, I mean, did I have to call the police to get, anyway, you know the story. You've all been that, you've heard that many times, from others. But clearly, the issue is there. It's an honest issue. It's a real issue. Society is struggling to resolve this issue on the unhoused. It's there. It's really important. One nice thing is that I noticed that in the newspaper here a couple of weeks ago, I saw Terry had been noted as being part of a statewide committee on housing, been participating in that and some local community activities. So I'm glad to see the chambers out there doing some work and being part of that as that's going on. But clearly, those issues, although they're getting better, they're not resolved and they're not there. One of the questions we've asked has been engaging over the last decade or better in doing the BR&E survey is, what skills are critical to your business or organization? Number one are called interpersonal skills. Now, people could answer more than one answer to what this question was, so that's why you see big numbers and percentages and things like that. But the number one issue is still these interpersonal skills. This is a really interesting category. This is a category called show up on time to work, okay? Come properly dressed, okay? Know how to say, may I help you? Understand common, polite, interpersonal relationship conversation to be able to talk to people who come into a business, sell them something, engage them in some way, but just basically human skills that need to be addressed and need to be strong. This is the number one issue, by the way. Last time we did the survey in 22, it's the number one issue. This time we did 22, and a lot of activities taking place. Where some training programs, special features the chamber's done. So these are things that are being addressed. They're being looked at. But we live in a particular community, that a lot of people on the interpersonal issues category come untrained, is a way to say it, and it's not a bad thing. It's just that that people don't know that there are certain behaviors that you need to act to, or normative behaviors that kind of allow businesses to be successful and useful in working. The others that are mentioned are specialized skills and a great deal of favorability around that are doing quite well, and then technical issues and trainings and those kind of things. And they seem to be getting the kinds of needs met that they're looking for in that as well. One of the other things we looked at was talking about institutions that can help you. Are you aware and have you ever used any of the following business institutions? Number one mentioned on this was the Chamber of Commerce at 87%. We're really glad that happened, because when we went and talked to them, we said, we're from the Chamber of Commerce, and so 13% of the people didn't pick us. So that's something to think about. I mean, you have to exactly wonder what's going on in someone's mind when a data piece like that occurs, so you can understand. That's why they call it margin of error in research. That there's this error that occurs, and right, so anyway, but it is ranked number one, and fits there. Main Street Resources is there, SBDC is their travel grants, and the top three are, by the way, are quite high and strong. Southern Oregon Regional Development already is listed. I mean, so the businesses are seeing these. I mean, a full third are looking at that, but work needs to be done on the outreach in the more regional areas, and some of these other institutions, and it runs all the way down to Business Oregon and those kind of things. So some real outreach and some real growth needs to take place in the business community, knowing what resources are available, because as Ruth had mentioned, they really do help a lot of people really understand how to do business, and it's very important. If you've ever interviewed someone who actually doesn't know anything about business but has one, it's a fascinating interview. It's just, you're going, wow, how did you get here? This is the most unorganized thing I've ever heard in my life, and you've got one of these things called a business. Great, and you love it. It's just, I mean, you've got to actually do it to really recall it. It's a lot of fun, and it's something. Oops, and I clicked something. What did I get here? Oops. Oh, I'm sorry. It's only on my side. We also asked a series of questions on city services and on county services and then services in general. The first question here on county services, as you can see, the ones at the top in the green are the very good and the good. And the way to read these data, by the way, is you kind of rank them, look at the ranks and so on and so forth. There's who ranked top and who ranked the bottom, and we put them in there. But you really want to take a look at the comparisons between those who say good and very good versus those who say fair and poor. And so it's the ratio between the two that really says what that issue means. And so as the yellows increase, that's less. The fair and poor, takes away from what's really going on. So in these county services, you got fire protection, city service, fire, police, disposal and recycling, school district number 7. Lots of people didn't know what that was. They didn't have children in school any longer. City parks and recreation, city public works, public sewer, so on and so forth. So good marks right across the board, and they're meeting that one-to-one. At best, you need to be on a one-to-one relationship between very good, good, and fair and poor. The reason why you need to be on a one-on-one relationship on those scales, the way to read that data, is because no one trusts you as a source if you're under 50%. So if you're a one-to-one ratio, people will listen to what your story is. If you're 6-to-1 favorable to unfavorable, hey, that's very good. If you're 6-to-1 unfavorable to favorable, that's very bad, which means that you don't even have the trust to be able to have a conversation with somebody in the community about what that particular institution is doing. So we run down this, and at the bottom of the list is the elected official rule and how that plays. The next is county services, exactly the same set of questions, although slightly different. Fairgrounds is number 1, Josephine County Clerk's Office, disposal, recycling, those kind of things, fire protection, great deal of effort and positiveness around those kind of things. Transportation as well, like not as many people use it, 36% say they have no opinion or no idea about it. Josephine County Parks, is high. County Airport, 50-50, but you can see that green to yellow. So you've got that, openness to talk about it, think about it, positive relationship, that kind of comparison is needed there until you get all the way down to the bottom. And then, you find that, the county planning department and the commissioners, have had some challenges of late, of which some of those are in the process of being resolved, in our local newspaper stories every single day we see these days. In fact, congratulations are in order actually for a new county commissioner who's with us this morning. So anyway, so you can see what's going on here. These kinds of issues are in play. They're around there. They need to be addressed. Of greater concern to me is the general area. And this is kind of like how people think of who we are and where we are. What is, how would you rate each of the following? The number one thing is a place in which to live. These are your businesses. They love living here. They really like being part of this town. They like it a lot. This is one thing Grants Pass, Josephine County has, is people just really like this area physically, their houses, the people, what's going on. You know, education's fine, broadband's kind of come up. It was a problem here a couple of years ago. You know, place to conduct business high, very high on that. You know, charter schools on and on and down. You know, you can see childcare is at the bottom. Again, these kind of things. So those things are there, but they're intransient. They're very difficult issues to take away. And so you need to take a look at it. You know, other things like trade schools are less known, that kind of stuff. But clearly people love being in the area. They love this. In general, when you take a look at the 2022 data, all of these issues have declined slightly over that period of time. So there's a slow decline in general about what the attitudes for what's valuable for our community, simply because of some of the elected officials' areas. And my last chart here is to keep some things in mind, by the way. This doesn't have all to do with Josephine County, Grants Pass, or anything like this. This is the citizens' attitudes. Again, this is from a Pew research, going back and looking from the 1960s to today. Do you have trust in your government? And you can see where the numbers are, barely above 20% nationally. If you ask people about Congress over the last 2 to 4 years, several times the numbers have dipped below 10%. So people in America are having difficulty trusting their governments that they elect, the people who are elected, their elected officials. These are national issues. They're not our issues alone. We're not the only one in America who's actually recalled someone lately or asked to have changes made in our political structure. It's something going on nationwide. It's there. It exists. It's something America needs to deal with. But clearly, it's also been just reading the newspaper, local issue and one that's important for us to take a look at. But it's a big, broader, general set of issues that are in play. And with that here, some key findings you'll find at the back of that document. And no, it took a little bit of time to get through this, but thank you very much, and that's it.
Thank you, Chuck. Nice job. And so for those in the room, you have obviously, we just printed the slides today. Once this project is complete, we do publish, it'll be available both digitally and in print, the survey summary results. But we've got a little bit of time left this morning. Again, some incredible resources, whether that's Sarah Long from Long's Research or Chuck with us. So I'm happy to open it up to any Q&A. If you've got a question, I'm going to come give you a mic. I think we're recording this for YouTube, and it would also help Sarah, who's online, hear your question. Any questions? Yeah. Thanks, Laurel.
So I guess, going back to the public service parts, it's mind-boggling to me that we don't trust anybody in city council, or very few of them, and the same thing at our county level. The one thing I didn't see on the county services is our sheriff's department. Where is that? I mean, we rated our police department, but not our sheriff's department.
I just put a note on that. I need to go back and look. We've been over these slides in the survey and the BR&E committee. I just wrote that down as well.
Great.
I think it's just us missing a data point on the slide.
Great. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
My question is for Chuck. On the products and services growth, page 15, is that a gross or a net, where it asks, looking at the past year, current, future, have your products or services increased, decreased, or stayed the same? Is that a financial number?
Yes.
And it's gross or it's the net? Do we know?
I don't think we made that distinction.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
we
I
did-
was on the committee, so I should have known my
Yeah,
question.
yeah, and
But
And I can help with that. And again, it goes back to the training we did with Hugh. There were a few questions, and again, for the sake of data, we really made sure that our surveyors did not lead the interviewers. And so we asked the question, if the interviewer would have asked me exactly what you're saying as a surveyor, are you asking me for gross or net? Typically speaking, we would just reframe the question and say, you know, here's how it is, answer it the way you would perceive the question to be answered.
Yeah, yeah, there's a distinction between how much money you put in your pocket and how much money you give away before you put some money in your pocket.
We did assure
and
them that we were not the IRS.
Yeah, right. Yeah, precisely. So we were not there to do that, to actually pull that out. So
Chuck, do you recall offhand what the difference was between respondents from within Grants Pass and those in the greater county?
yeah, the greater county was the total number of people there were less than I think 17% of the total sample, and so the sample is very small, and so trying to aggregate past the aggregated data in general on this survey is inadvisable. So the aggregated data gives us a confidence in the data based on our sample surveys. If it was a complete random survey, which it was not, okay. You know, decent data numbers, all right. And we've conducted it now 8 times. So we've got consistent data over time with a consistent methodology that's worked pretty well. But we've not been able to make that distinction as clear. But we did speak to out-county businesses and got some good responses and some good interviews there. And there's differences in how they look at the world, by the way, for anyone who volunteered, by the way, and did some of those interviews. They actually look at the world differently. so it's right. It's good, but my general answer would be I think they do see it differently, and I think they see their business as a different business. Right. Yeah.
We'll go over here.
Yes.
Thank you, Chuck. I realize any subject is very complex, but for a small business, if you were to choose 3 items that are very essential to a successful small business, what would you focus on?
Yeah, I think one of the things you really have to focus on is you have to focus on being able to employ people that can make your business more successful, and I think that's really critical. It's been the number one issue, not only this year but in years past. It's consistently there. I think then finding a training program once you have them that you can actually make them successful and make them grow with the business and find out, ways to incite people that are highly beneficial. One of the questions as a byline before I get to my third one of those, that we did not show in the data, is that actually the businesses provide a great deal of benefits to their employees. 55, 60% of the businesses have some kind of a profit sharing, have some kind of a retirement plan, have some kind of an insurance program, have some kind of a ongoing training for younger and new people coming in, and on and on and on, all the way down the list. In other words, when you think about what it is you need to do to be able to have a good business, are the tools in place that allow that business to therefore function and operate and do well. And the businesses seem to be offering those tools. It's not 100% on any of those factors, but so how you incentivize that employee base, how you look at that, how you structure and think that through, seems to be something to look at. And I think lastly, my third would be really looking at some of these intractable issues that do cause problems. Childcare, which is something someone just can't deal with. The homelessness issue, which is a cooperative effort between business and government to solve these problems and what they need to do. It's particularly, by the way, important to solve them in the healthcare business for solving things like homelessness. If someone doesn't have a home and they have a medical emergency and then they go and use medical services, costs kind of go up and no revenue comes in. You see what I'm saying? These kinds of things. And so this is a societal set of issues that makes health of the overall community much, much better off over time. So we need to look at these broader individualized business growth areas as well as community growth areas and combine them well. And that's what a chamber is supposed to is all about. I mean, it's representing businesses in that sense, but the businesses themselves need to play a role in making sure that society is equally well balanced in these kinds of things. And those are very complicated, difficult, intractable, things. I mean, the human condition has gotten a lot better, by the way. It's, if you look at data charts that talk about, how well humans are doing, it's been a fabulous 300 or 400 years. The last 300 or 400 years, we've educated the world. I mean, this, right, in today's world, and you can pick any answer for this you want, there's more money in the world than there has ever been before, and the base of the world about people not having any money at all has risen enormously, in the last really 125 years, 150 years. So this long century we've been on, this long century the world's been on, us sapiens, as a, class of everybody, we've really gotten ahead in what's going on. You can put any answer to that you want, but it's been a massive, massive change for the good, pretty much, but, right, yes. Yes.
So on the topic of the data point of 10% of the earners driving the majority of consumer spending, is there a time or an era in the modern U.S. history, so last 100 years or so, where we saw something like this? And question number 2 is, how long do we expect to take? 18 months, 2 years, 2 months for that K-shaped curve to converge back where we're not seeing such a disparity in the consumer spending?
Yeah, I saw 2 questions for me there, Marty. I think the consumer spending thing is the less money you have, the more cautious you are about spending it, and the more nervous you get about making sure you don't have anything for a rainy day, because you can see the rainy day coming. Hopefully it's not like hopefully you can see past tomorrow, but you can only plan so far out. So people have to plan their own financial structure further out than that. So that's the first answer to that. It's a little how tight that is. In terms of the role money plays in society, I think we're very good, and I was correct, I think, in my mind, but I'm trying to think of my data sources here. There is more money in the world than we've ever had before, but there's also, our distribution system is not equitable, if you haven't noticed this. So people that have resources tend to be gaining more resources, and people that don't have resources have been gaining more resources as well, just at a different scale on how that scale has been. So the issue of money and what money is in society is, I can't say is that getting better or getting worse, because I don't have a good data point to say, yeah, it used to be, 10% of the people bought 50% of the goods, and boy, that's way better than it was last year, which was 8%. You see what I'm saying? So I don't have a number data to give you that distinctive data, data analysis. I would recommend some books to read. You could chat with me about that later. But Stewart's book, 9.9%, all of the work that was done by C. Wright Mills in the 1950s even, those kinds of people about what are elite societies, how does the have and have not world work, what is the rich and the poor, how do we divide that? I mean, those are very important and critical issues, for society to engage in. It's something we don't engage in, by the way, in my opinion, as a society very well. And because you asked that question, I will make this little common statement. One thing we don't have is, from Chuck's perspective, so you can shoot it down completely, okay, at every level, okay, is we don't have a good common language for us to talk to our family, our neighbors, and our friends about what money is and what money means to me. So because we don't have a good way to talk about money, so, hey, how much did you make last year? We just met at a cocktail party. We're just right here, right? And I think you would look at me and say, and by the way, you're bigger, so don't, I recognize that. So, you'd say, why are you asking me that question? You have no right to know the answer to that. We don't have a way that we normally talk to each other about what money means. So what we do is we symbolize money. You see, I've got this little thing here I'm wearing. You see, okay, I've got this pen. You see, I use it. You see what I'm saying? So we symbolize, through goods and services and our conversation what it means, but we never actually tell anybody what it is we have. And so society doesn't have a way to talk about money in a way that's realistic about their own life to their own neighbors and their own family. It's very difficult for society, therefore, to have a model that goes out and says, how do we go about calculating that and making sure that everyone's being best handled by that? And we don't know what scales to use, in my opinion, to make that work and work well. And so I think as a society, do we have places to grow? And oh, by the way, one place in society where it's acceptable to have a conversation about money is business. We've got a model. There's a model for business. And you can sit down with someone and say, well, what were your sales last year? Okay, we just told you right here, right? We went out and asked all those questions. We didn't get specific data because we weren't looking to be we're not auditors from the IRS, right? So we were conducting a survey. But the point is we were able to ask those questions and get general trends. But this whole idea about, how to handle money in society, I think is a massive problem, not only in our society. It's worse in authoritarian societies as I see them, because fewer people have more of the resources. Ours in a democracy is more widespread, but it's still the top 10%, whatever, 15%, 20%, whatever you want. And there's a lot driving that, and that's, that causes problems. Those cause big issues. So, yes.
You had a slide showing the areas in which small businesses market their products. Does that ring a bell?
Oh. Yes, right.
Okay, and so I'm just looking at the macroeconomics. We have an area here where when we sell outside our community, it brings outside money in. It would be interesting with that market geography to have our consumer geography to see what we consume and where it comes from, and in what sector is it, and where we consume, if it's greater than what we sell to the state or to the United States, then it reduces our pool of money or marbles that we have here. Do you have any intuitive sense for, are we exporting our dollars elsewhere because we buy more products from other places rather than buying local?
Yeah. Boy, I'd love the answer is I'd love the answer to that question. I think that would be very helpful for us to know. And I don't know of the data source that tells us that. My best guess is, and this is only because I'm not paying as much attention as I used to some of these things. So the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, has some great data. If you there's a link you can go to, by the way, and you can pull up the whole country, but you can also pull up the state of Oregon, and then we have our local economics organization in Oregon, the Economist Group, that put out its monthly reports on Oregon economics, where they identify businesses that have come into business into local regions and those areas. I mean, I think that would be a source to go to ask that question and see whether either BLS has it or, and from an Oregon perspective, and we can look at us as a state versus other states to start off with, and then we can look at our regional area within the state with the Oregon Economics Department. They may be the ones to do that. We've partnered, Terry, I think, a number of times with the local economics group. Who's their economist is?
Guy Tower.
Yeah, Guy Tower. He's terrific. He's a terrific guy. He's very open and engaged. Is Guy here?
Jeff.
Oh, Jeff. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, great.
I work with Guy in the employment department. I'm a workforce analyst, so I have a little bit more of a local focus, and then Guy is going to have a little bit more of a federal focus.
And
Well,
Joel, to your
first
point,
first
Jeff,
of all,
Jeff
yes.
sends me some great slides that I'm share with you. Actually, I started to compile them in response to Indra's Small Business Task Force. Jeff has been instrumental in getting me. I don't know if it's truly sales data as much as it is employment data, Jeff?
Microphone.
Well, yeah, we focus on workforce, but we draw
Yeah.
on a wide array of both macro and, excuse me. Morning, everyone. So we focus on workforce specifically, but we draw on a wide array of both macro and microeconomic data sources.
Yeah, and so Joel, to your point, I may not have, truly that market geography sales dollars, but I think it's fairly reflective in industry segment employment.
Could we say then that there's probably more money leaving our area than coming in?
Yeah.
I don't know that answer off the top of my
Right.
head, but I'm glad to do some research.
Good. Yeah, that would be I think we need to kind of find out where to go look to find that. That's kind of it's a very good number to have. And by the way, thanks for being here. I'm really glad you're here. So I appreciate that. So that or, something out of BLS where someone's actually taking that down to a tighter realm. I don't know if all of you remember here in 2022, we had a piece of work we did. We presented last time. It was called the Geography of Work, done by AEI, American Enterprise Institute, by Eberstadt and Van Ness, who basically talked about a very interesting model called labor force participation rate. So it's not exactly what you're talking about, but I want you to take a look at this map of the United States. You notice something really interesting along the West Coast. There's one little red dot kind of in the middle there with none other around it for a long geographic region. That's Josephine County. And so there's a report that they did. I looked this up to see if Everhart and Van Ness had actually updated this piece of work to get some sense of it, and they hadn't, at least in my searching for it. But basically, it's a labor force participation rate, and we rank in the bottom 10% of the 510 MSRs MSAs that exist in the nation. So we are a very, very low labor force participating county, and this is an important thing to keep. So there's something going on. My analysis was 3 years ago, and seeing I have no new data, guess what? My analysis hasn't changed. But in other words, so what's taking place culturally in our area that's creating that particular kind of labor force non-participation? And that would be an interesting thing attached to your question and attached to that issue about what kinds of training people need to join the workforce and be part of Josephine County businesses. I mean, there may be some linkage to all of those things that fit together, some social, some economic, but
It's interesting because
right, they may be
produces
interrelated.
Wealth.
Yeah.
It adds to the economy, and if
Yes.
you don't have people laboring, they're not adding to the economy.
Precisely. Yes. Yeah. Right. It's you actually. The more people you have, the bigger your economy is. You all know that story. Okay? I'm not going to go into any of that. That's, right. But yes.
Where did you get your list to put the survey out to businesses, your list of businesses? And does that include home-based business and mobile business such as food trucks? And then is there a breakdown? This is all businesses. Is there a breakdown per industry of all of these data points?
Yeah, a couple of questions. One is on the methodology. A task force at the Chamber of Commerce selected a series of businesses that they felt represented Josephine County and Grants Pass as businesses to be represented in the overall scheme of things. So it was a selected sample of a special interest group called Businesses Only, okay? So a special interest, okay. But it was not a random sample of all businesses that exist, so you can apply standard statistical data analysis to that model, okay? So the answer, if that makes sense. The methodology chart in the write-up gives you the exact way we went about the sampling, and that's in that write-up you've got there. And basically then we went out and took that selected group of people that the chamber provided, and those were the interviews we conducted. So the answer is, one way to statistically say what is this data, although we've got longitudinal over time ways to look at it, is that this is what these businesses answered on the day they answered the survey. That's one statistical analysis you can apply to this, and that would be the absolute correct statistical analysis across the board. So in special interest groups, so if you want to talk to doctors, and I'm not a doctor, but you talk to me, you can see how your sample's flawed, because I don't know anything about being a doctor, and therefore, I'm not good at answering those questions. But if you talk to a doctor about being a businessman, they may or may not be one. You see what I'm saying? And so on and so forth. So what we did is we limited our conversation to businessmen and women. By the way, there were quite a few women in this. Was not genderizing that question in any way, but there were who were selected to be part of this, and we did not record gender, by the way, or those kinds of demographics, or what the business's income was. But we do have data on what industry they claimed they were in. So, I think in 17, we went back and I got very nervous about that question. And so we went and took all the businesses that we interviewed and got the SIC codes out and then categorized each one of the businesses based on what we saw that business fulfilling in the SIC codes versus what the person who thought their business was. And we found that there was a fairly large discrepancy between, like 10 or 15 points at least, in terms of what someone thought their industry was versus what their industry really was. So it depends on how you want to, and because some people are in multiple industries too, by the way. They're all right, because they do represent different industries, but what's the majority of that, and how do you determine that, and what is the SIC code based on? Anyway, it gets in to a little bit more of a complicated sort process there, but we do have data on that and can provide that, and that's in those other charts. Sorry, everybody, for that. And was that completely gibberish, or did anybody? Okay, did anybody get any idea of what I was saying? So, okay.
Laurel, we're going to go up to you. Mark had to step aside for a second.
Okay. So, twofold question, I guess. One for you is you made a comment earlier on about how to bring employees in, and that most businesses are offering, health insurance or 401ks or the like.
Yeah.
I own a barber shop. I have 13 people that work in my barber shop. We're a small business. I can't afford to do that. So that leads to my retention and the resources that are out there for specifically barbering. I can't go to use Workforce Oregon because it's not I don't pay them by the hour. So I can't even go there and put an ad saying I'm looking for a barber, where a barber might be working as a waitress or a bartender or a DJ or whatever the case may be within our community. My resources to find people don't lie in our community. It's crazy. And so what I have to do is I have to go to other communities, and that's where I'm seeking people to come to work for me. However, there's no housing, nowhere to put those people. It's like this vicious cycle that I feel like our business is like, I feel like sometimes I have no local resource except for the chamber.
Yeah, thank you, Laurel, because your frustration is felt across the board. I can tell you, again, it's data, it's participation. I'll maybe tag on to Indra's question a little bit. Some people are easy to get a hold of. If we wanted to conduct this survey with all downtown brick and mortars, this would have been super simple. When we try and make sure that we get out into the county, and I'll give you a specific example. I want to hear the voice of the plumbers, the electricians, the welders. You know what? Those guys don't have a brick and mortar. I can't just pop by and see them. And usually if I say, can you spare an hour of your time, they'll say, that's billable at about $150 an hour. And so we hear you. But the data and the participation and the folks that participate in the chamber, again, we're a reflection of you. And coincidentally enough, another function that this committee does is called a Perspective series, about once a quarter. And actually, I give some credit to Steve Rowe because he, I come from an industry that used to be called hamburger flippers. Now they're celebrity chefs. He comes from an industry that used to be called grease monkeys. Now they're called auto techs and make $100,000 a year. And so this next two-part series in our Perspectives program is going to kick off with employee recruitment and then follow up with employee retention. And again, it's not us by ourselves. It's connecting with our local beauty school. I did some work earlier in this year. And this is an odd one. We're running out of veterinarians in our area, right? And so where do I go to find veterinarians? I don't go to the high school. Maybe I do. Maybe I'm showing people there's an interest in how much they make. I do engage with the career centers, but then okay, where are the veterinarian schools in Oregon? There's basically one, maybe kind of two, and so we engage with them. And so it is community lift to get where you're going. Other questions?
Yeah, the answer to your benefits, here's the question. Here's the data we did. That was, as I told you, there were another 50 plus slides that we could have gone through. So this is what type of benefits does your company or organization offer its employees? And you can see there, okay, kind of what's on that data structure. And these are available as well. We just, we would have, if you wanted to spend 2.5 hours with me, wouldn't that have been really boring? I mean, we could take sleeping, instructions after that. But anyway, so there's a lot more data here to look at. Yes.
Did I miss a question? Did somebody have their hand up? Okay, Kate.
I'm really curious if at some point we could ask some of our businesses about the kind of training they did get to run a business. I'm supportive of, for instance, our schools saying we want to train more people to have businesses in the trades, but I'm emphatic that unless they are actually teaching those people how to run a small independent business, it doesn't matter if they're running a barbershop or a plumbing company. They have to know how to run an independent business. And the same with veterinarians, because if we train them up, but they can't run the business, they're going to move somewhere else and work in a large veterinary practice where there's someone else who runs the business. So for everything that we want to build here on small business, it really doesn't matter. I meet a young person who says, I want to run a bakery. I said, then you want to learn business. No, I want to learn baking. No, you need to learn business of baking. And I just think it's crucially important for our economy to develop those business skills. And so I would be curious sometime to find out how those people became successful in business locally, what they think works, what they think the challenges are for keeping up with technology, for keeping up with running their business, and what they think would be most effective for empowering more businesses in our community.
Great question. So I'm going to go macro on you on that, but there's a lot of really good business stories that have been written about how businesses start and how they last. I think one of the ones that was very seminal recently, that is the last 30 years, it was built to last. So how do you build a business that lasts over a period of time? These were also very large businesses, by the way, and to get data in terms of on how many businesses are started and how many businesses fail over a given period of time is an enormous set of numbers and data. There is data on that. I don't have it right with me, but you can find out data about that. There's a huge set of trends, in that, and good stories in that, and good ways to go about doing that. I don't disagree with any of your theses about, how do we get people how do you get people to abstract from what they do to to be one level above? So in other words, I'm not being a baker, I'm being a business person who actually bakes. Okay, so how do they become a business person who bakes versus a baker who's trying to figure out what business means? So we're trying to, so it's that, it's taking that model and then putting that together. So I'd say, those kinds of books that are like that, there's quite a few of them around. They're really good. The lessons they teach are excellent. They're essentially a business school, an MBA kind of a process where how you become a master's in business, and know what that means. So I think it's there. It's difficult, but it's a very real place to get data on. So yeah.
After Ruth, I think we'll have time for one more. So if anybody wants to be that final question, let me know.
I just wanted to respond by saying yes, and more yes. We need support, along with saying that Rogue Community College leadership is passionate about workforce training and building career paths and assisting people with educational paths that lead to higher income in the trades and in other industries. If they want to go to college and go into chemistry, they start at a community college and then move on. There's a very strong emphasis at Rogue Community College on coupling small business training that SBDC does with programs that go into high schools. I mean, RCC has just been, and I'm not just saying this because we have a member of our board here. Thank you, Indra, for your leadership. I'm involved heavily with those training programs and the future of industries that are going to drive the local economy and help people take the next step in whatever industry they want to be in locally. Construction is an example of that. Welding, truck driver training, things that get people into a good job instead of leaving. Those are very high growth areas at the college.
All right, anybody else? Great. Well, I will wrap up where I started, and that is with a sincere thank you. I mean, whether that's the businesses in our community that really are the fabric of making this community what it is today, staff, committee members, Chuck, thank you. I mean, your knowledge, your expertise, and your ability to dissect this data and ground us in facts and ground us in data is invaluable. I appreciate you. And Trevor, thanks for hosting us today. Again, thank you all. Have a great day. Oh, Christy's telling me there's food back there, so whether it's for yourself, your staff, grab a to-go box and take some food. Fireside didn't want to take any back.